Next, I have some zucchini. For our dish today, we're going to do a sauteed chicken breast, and we're going to do a sauteed batonette of zucchini. A batonette is a 1/4 inch by a 1/4 inch by 2 inches. So we trim the ends of the zucchini off, and I like to cut it into about 2-inch pieces. These 2-inch pieces will then be easier to cut into our 1/4 inch panels. 1/4 inch panel. And now, just like the julienne, we can go into 1/4 inch pieces of zucchini. That'll look really, really nice on the plate. The last vegetable that I'm going to show, and the last cut that I'm going to show, is using a red pepper, orange pepper, yellow pepper, green pepper, any bell pepper that you'd like. And we're going to demonstrate a paisan cut. A paisan cut is a flat panel cut that's roughly a 1/4 inch squared by an 1/8 inch thick. It's a little bit different. It's a panel cut that can be a square, it can be a triangle, it can be a trapezoid. It's really an aesthetic cut that's used. The vegetable is then cut and then put on the plate for a little bit of eye appeal and to break up the monotony of the dice and the square. It's kind of a fun cut. I use it a lot in my cooking because it does break up the plate presentation and it makes it look pretty nice. There's a million and one ways to cut a bell pepper. What I found to work the best is to cut the panel sides off, and now we're left with these nice panels to work with where we have minimal waste. All the seed pod is stuck right there, all hanging out together, so now we can just throw that away. There's not pepper seeds all over the place, and it just seems to be cleaner. We get a lot of yield out of it. We're going to take the pepper, and for this what I like to do is fillet the pepper so it's nice and even. And as we fillet that pepper out, we're creating the natural size of that pepper is about an 1/8 of an inch thick. So now we have the paisan that's an 1/8 of an inch thick. So at this point we can cut our little panels. We can cut our panels about a 1/4 of an inch thick. And from this point we can then square them off. And now we can cut 1/4 inch squares. So we cut a 1/4 inch square and we have a paisan. For an aesthetic reason, we can cut those again, and now we have the paisan as a triangle. And these look just really, really cool on a plate. They show a level of knife skills that a lot of people just don't bother doing anymore, because it is a little time consuming. So we'll take our paisan cut orange bell peppers. The rest of these scraps can be saved for red pepper coulis, for different soups. And again, we'll fillet the pepper out again, use that for coulis. Panel cut it to be roughly about a 1/4 inch. And now we have our 1/4 inch cubes, or slices. And we can cut them in half again for the paisan cut. Clean up our mess and get into chicken butchery. So we're back. Just done washing our hands after the vegetable cooking, or cutting, just to make sure that we work very, very clean as we get into chicken butchery. Chicken butchery, we want to make sure that we work very, very clean, very, very sanitized, keeping all of our ingredients extremely cold. We have a 4-inch half pan here with some ice in it, a piece of saran wrap to protect the chicken from the ice, and then the chicken directly on the ice. I have a pot here for our stock parts. I have a pan of ice, again with our saran wrap on it to protect the chicken for our parts that we're going to use to cook with. And then I have our scrap bucket. I have mirepoix vegetables ready to go. Mirepoix, 2 parts onions, 1 part carrot, 1 part celery, ready to go for our stock. We're going to take the carcass and make a stock. We're going to take the wings off, the legs off. I have a boning knife here, and let's get to the chicken. When we're butchering chicken, the first thing I like to do is trim off any of this extra tail fat. tends just to get in the way of our butchery. There is utilization for it. You can render it down, but most people just tend to cut it off, to throw it out. There's, again, a whole lot of ways to butcher a chicken. The ones that I found is the way that I was taught, so that's how I like to do it. I always start with the legs facing me, and we cut this right, just the skin, and from the leg, from the breast. And we want to use a little bit of the knife expose the thigh joint. The bone pops right away from the socket, so we expose that joint. Now we can see the bone. We take our knife along the spine, right up to that joint. When we get to the joint, you can see it. The socket points out. We take our knife, hold it down, and what you want to do is try to capture that little pocket of meat underneath in the back, called the oyster. And hopefully, we can get them out. It's just got a lot of flavor in it, and that way we're utilizing as much of that chicken as possible. Cut away right around the back, and we did. We captured it. That's the oyster there, and now we have a leg and a thigh. We'll put that on ice, and we'll get back to that in a minute. We do the same thing on the other side, cutting the flesh, popping the socket out, and you ride the bone, ride the spine right up to that socket. Push down on the socket with your knife, you pop that oyster right out of this back. On the wings, depending on what you do, if you want to do a French airline chicken breast, you want to leave the entire wing attached. For this application, where we want to bone the skinless chicken breast, we're going to remove that wing. So we're going to expose the socket again. We don't want to cut too much of the flesh off of the wing, because we can use that for other applications as well. Again, doing it on the other side, we cut right around, expose the socket, and cut through the socket. Now we have our two wings, our two legs and thighs. Next, we get into the breast. You want to have the breast facing you, where the keel bone is up. With the keel bone up facing you, you can feel it. It's a piece of cartilage that runs right down the front of these two pieces of breast meat. Taking a very sharp knife, we just come right down one side of the keel bone. When we come down the side of the keel bone, you just want to carefully remove the flesh from the bone. When you get to the wishbone in the front, you can expose that wishbone. With your fingers, you feel that bone against the flesh. If you take your knife and go right on each side of that wishbone, get rid of some of this fat, you can feel the wishbone, and then you can pop it right off and remove it right from the flesh. Nothing going to waste, we want to put that in our stock pot. Back to getting the breast meat off of the bone, we want to just ever so gently let the gravity and the weight of the breast do most of the work, where we just keep our knife very, very close to the bone, and we take away the breast meat. Now we have our chicken breast. And keep that on ice. And we do the same thing on the other side. Come down on the side of the keel bone. Let the weight of the chicken do its magic, and it'll peel itself right away from the breastbone. Boneless chicken. Carcass can go right in the stock. So now we have our chicken parts, where we need to determine what are we going to do with them. For the application today, we want a boneless, skinless chicken breast. So we're just going to pull the skin off, right off of the chicken. On the flip side, you have these little chicken tenderloins. You want to remove them, and you can use them for something else. They're great for, well, chicken tenders. They're great for other applications, excellent in force meat. And now we have a boneless, skinless chicken breast where we can just trim up a little bit of this extra fat and move forward with it. Again, we'll remove the tenderloin, remove the skin, working quickly because we don't want it to be in the danger zone. Although we do have it on ice, just to help us out, we still want to move quickly. Trim off some of the connective tissue. On the skinless chicken breast. We can take the chicken and thigh, or the leg and thigh, the leg and thigh, and there's a piece of fat that goes right in between these. And if you follow that fat line, you'll hit the joint perfectly. A lot of people, as soon as they cut in there, they'll hit a bone, and they'll press and they'll force it. And what happens then is bone fragments get into your meat. The last thing you want to do is get a bone fragment and serve it to the guest. So you find that little area of fat, and then you can find the joint. You want to cut through the joint, not through the bone. There should be very little resistance. Now we have a chicken leg, and now we have a chicken thigh. Do it again over here, where we find that line of fat. We find that line of fat right there between the leg and the thigh. Cut straight down, and you'll always hit that joint. Notice I didn't cut the joint, I cut through the joint. Next, we'll make these boneless, skinless. So we'll peel the skin off of our boneless, skinless thighs. Awesome, awesome idea for a center-of-the-plate protein. They're cheaper than the boneless, skinless chicken breast, and they're just so much more flavorful. They just take a little bit more of time to trim out some of that fat. And to take out the bone. To take out the bone, you just run each side, peeling away the flesh from the bone. Once you get the bone exposed, you just come down and just peel the flesh away from the bone. Cut the bone cartilage away from the flesh, and that can go into our stock. There's usually a piece of cartilage that's always on there, and where that bone connected. So we just want to trim that out too. Now we have a nice boneless, skinless chicken thigh that we can use for our entree as well. We'll do that with the other one. This time, let's take the bone off first, where we can trim that bone out. Scraping the meat off of it. Cut the bone off, away from the cartilage, into stock. Trim the fat off again, just pulling the skin off. Trim the little sides of fat. We have a boneless, skinless chicken thigh. So all of our parts, we have our boneless, skinless chicken breast, which we're going to saute, our boneless, skinless chicken thighs, which we're going to saute, our legs, and then our wings. With our wings, we can take these little wing tips and add them to our stock and use those for other applications. Take our other wing tips and use them for stock. Stock, we're going to remove our gloves. I have our mirepoix, our chicken bones. We're going to fill that with cold water and stick it on the stove so it'll just develop flavor. Once it comes up to a boil, we'll skim it, we'll turn it down and let it simmer for 4 to 6 hours, add some aromatics, let it cook for another half hour, and then we have chicken stock. We'll clean up our mess and let's get cooking.